What happens when the most famous action hero on the planet can leap from buildings, hang off airplanes, and save the world on screen, but can't seem to find his way to his own daughter's birthday? The answer is more devastating than you could ever imagine, and after 13 years of silence, she's finally revealing what really happened. Look, we've all seen Tom Cruise do the impossible. He scaled the Burj Khalifa, he's clung to the side of a flying military plane, he's literally broken his ankle mid-stunt and kept filming. The man is fearless, legendary, untouchable. But there's one thing he apparently couldn't do: be there for his daughter. For over a decade, the world watched as Suri, the little girl who used to skip down New York sidewalks holding her mom's hand, grew up in the shadows of one of Hollywood's biggest mysteries. Where was Tom? Why the complete radio silence? And most importantly, what was going through that young girl's mind as she watched her father become everyone's hero except hers? Today, at 19 years old, she's no longer staying quiet. And what she's revealing through her choices, her actions, and the life she's deliberately built away from the Hollywood machine is absolutely heartbreaking. This isn't just another celebrity gossip story. This is about a girl who spent her entire childhood waiting for footsteps that never came. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear is going to change how you see one of the biggest movie stars of all time. Let's rewind to April 18, 2006. St. John's Health Center in Santa Monica, California. A baby girl enters the world, and you'd think it would be a moment of pure joy, right? Celebration, laughter, maybe some happy tears, but that's not what happened. Instead, Katie Holmes gave birth in complete silence. No screams, no cries of pain, nothing. Why? Because she was following the strict rules of a silent birth, a practice deeply rooted in Scientology beliefs. And here's the kicker: there were apparently men in dark suits standing in that delivery room, watching, making sure the rules were followed to the letter. Think about that for a second. Your most vulnerable moment as a mother, and you're being monitored like you're under surveillance. Katie later described those early years in ways that made people's skin crawl, but at the time, she had no choice. This was the world she'd married into. For little Suri, those first few years looked magical from the outside. Private jets, red carpets, and photographers documenting her every adorable outfit. She became America's most photographed toddler. But behind those paparazzi shots of the perfect family, something else was brewing. Katie's parents were reportedly alarmed. Close friends noticed she was never alone, always accompanied by people who seemed to be monitoring her, like invisible chains were wrapped around her daily life. She couldn't make a move without someone knowing about it, reporting back, keeping tabs. But Suri didn't know any of that. She was just a little kid who loved playing dress-up, who giggled when her dad lifted her onto his shoulders, who felt safe in a world that seemed full of love and possibility. And then, just like that, everything shattered. June 2012. Suri is 6 years old. She's in that magical age where the world still feels safe, where mom and dad are your entire universe, where you believe that nothing bad can really touch you. And then her mom files for divorce. Just days before Tom's 50th birthday, Katie Holmes pulled off what legal experts later called one of the most strategically brilliant divorce maneuvers in Hollywood history. She didn't just file paperwork, she executed an escape plan that had been months, maybe even years in the making. See, Katie had been changing her phone constantly. She'd started avoiding certain rooms in their own home because she suspected they were bugged. She replaced staff members she believed were feeding information back to the church. This wasn't paranoia. This was a woman who understood she was in a battle for her daughter's future, and she was terrified of losing. She chose New York deliberately. The custody laws there favored stability for the child. She filed while Tom was overseas filming in Iceland, ensuring he'd be blindsided. And he was. The man who controls every aspect of his public image suddenly found out he was getting divorced the same way the rest of us did, by reading the headlines. 11 days. That's how long it took to finalize everything. 11 days from filing to done. Tom agreed to pay around $400,000 annually in child support, cover medical and education costs, and give Katie full custody. But here's what matters most. Katie fought tooth and nail to ensure Suri would be raised outside of Scientology. Former members have spoken about something called the Sea Org program, an intense, all-consuming commitment within the church that some described as borderline militaristic. Katie reportedly feared that as Suri grew older, she'd be pushed into that world, and she would sacrifice anything to prevent it. Within days of the divorce being finalized, Katie and Suri vanished from Los Angeles. They packed what they could carry and started a new life in New York City. Just like that, Suri's entire world changed overnight. Imagine being 6 years old and suddenly your dad, the guy who was your whole world, just disappears. No explanation that really makes sense, just gone. And the worst part, he wasn't actually gone. He was everywhere, on every billboard, every movie poster, every magazine cover, hanging off skyscrapers for millions of people to watch and cheer for. He was everywhere except where it mattered. He was everywhere except with her.
So what does childhood look like when your father is one of the most recognizable faces on Earth, but you only see him on screens? For Suri, it looked like walking to school with her mom every single day. Simple dinners at their New York apartment, homework at the kitchen table, subway rides through the city, a deliberately normal life that Katie worked overtime to create and protect. But something was missing, something huge, something that no amount of normalcy could fill. As the years went by, Suri watched her father the way the rest of us did, as a spectator. She saw him dangling from helicopters, racing motorcycles off cliffs, doing stunts that would make most people pass out from fear. Every time she walked past a bookstore or a movie theater, there he was, that famous smile, that legendary intensity. He was saving the world on screen over and over and over again, but he never showed up to save the relationship with his daughter. Reports started surfacing in 2013 that Tom had only seen Suri once since the divorce. Once. After that, radio silence. No confirmed visits, no photographs, no sightings, nothing. By the time she turned 10, the questions started getting harder. At first, it was simple. Where's Dad? But as she got older, those questions evolved into something much more painful. Why doesn't he want to see me? She watched her friends get picked up after school by their fathers. She sat through dance recitals and school plays where other kids had both parents in the audience cheering them on. And she learned to smile through it, to act like it didn't hurt, to carry her disappointment quietly so her mom wouldn't worry even more than she already did. Katie never badmouthed Tom, not once. She could have easily turned Suri against him, could have used her own pain and fear to poison that relationship, but she didn't. Instead, she held on to a belief that some truths are too heavy for a child to carry until they're ready. But here's the thing about kids. They're not stupid. They might not understand all the details, but they absolutely understand absence. They understand when someone chooses not to show up, when birthdays pass without a call, when holidays come and go without a message. Suri learned emotional independence not because she wanted to, but because she had to. She learned to ride the subway alone, to finish school projects by herself, to handle her feelings in private. She became self-sufficient by necessity, not by choice. And through it all, she never learned to hate him, because that's not how children's hearts work. They don't hate. They ache, they wonder, they wait, they hope against hope that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow kept coming, and nothing ever changed. Fast forward to 2020. Suri is 14 years old, and the world shuts down because of the pandemic. Suddenly, she has something she's never really had before: time. Time alone with her thoughts, time to process, time to search for answers that adults had been carefully keeping from her for years. She started digging, reading articles, watching documentaries, looking into testimonies from former Scientology members, and slowly, piece by piece, the puzzle started coming together.
She learned about policies within the organization that allegedly discouraged members from maintaining close relationships with people outside of it. She read stories from parents who claimed they'd been separated from their children because of these policies. She discovered a word that kept appearing over and over: disconnection. And suddenly, everything made a devastating kind of sense. Suri wasn't mentioned directly in any of these accounts, obviously, but she saw herself reflected in the consequences. She understood that she wasn't just a daughter who'd been forgotten. She was a daughter caught on the wrong side of an invisible line, a line that apparently mattered more than blood, more than memories, more than love. This realization didn't make her angry at first. It made her heartbroken, because it meant that for 12 years she'd been standing in a doorway waiting for someone who couldn't or wouldn't cross a threshold that had nothing to do with geography and everything to do with ideology. One morning when she was 15, she walked into the kitchen and found her mom quietly crying while reading an article about Tom's latest movie premiere. Suri didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't need to. The pain was mutual. The loss was shared. The abandonment was a weight they'd both been carrying separately, trying to protect each other from the full truth of it. Katie had spent years being both mother and father. She'd shown up to every school event, every milestone, every moment where a child needed a parent. She'd carried the burden of Suri's abandonment on her own shoulders while simultaneously trying to shield her daughter from feeling the full weight of it. But by 16, Suri was ready. Not for the media's version of events, not for the rumors and speculation, but for her own truth, the one she lived but never fully understood until now.
April 2024. Suri turns 18. And for most people, that's just a birthday, another year, maybe a party with friends, some presents, the usual celebration. But for Suri, turning 18 meant something infinitely more powerful. It meant that legally, officially, she now had complete control over her own identity, her own choices, her own narrative. In the weeks leading up to her birthday, she was working on college application essays, and in those essays, she wrote something that would make even the toughest admissions officer stop and take a breath. Sometimes we don't grow up with love. We grow up with the space that love leaves behind. Read that again. Let it sink in. An 18-year-old girl summarizing 13 years of abandonment in a single devastating sentence. She didn't name her father. She didn't need to. The world knew exactly who she meant. But for the first time, the story belonged to her, not to the tabloids, not to the speculation, not to the endless "Where is Tom?" headlines, to her. While other teenagers were planning parties and posting celebration photos, Suri spent her 18th birthday staring at herself in the mirror, seeing someone who'd spent half her life grieving a person who was still alive. She realized something profound. She didn't need to wait anymore. Not for a phone call, not for an explanation, not for a father who'd made it abundantly clear through 13 years of silence that he wasn't coming back. And that's when she made her decision. On May 17, 2024, exactly 1 month after turning 18, Suri walked into an office and signed paperwork to legally change her name. She dropped Cruise entirely and became Suri Noel Holmes, choosing her mother's middle name as a tribute to the woman who'd carried her through the storm alone. People expected her to cry. She expected herself to cry. But instead, she felt relief. The kind of relief that washes over you when you finally stop holding on to something that's only ever caused you pain. The world noticed immediately. Her new name appeared in her high school graduation program. It appeared on the cast list when she performed in her school's production of the Addams Family musical. It appeared on her acceptance documents to Carnegie Mellon University, where she enrolled to study fashion. Media outlets called it an act of rebellion. Some said she was making a statement. Others claimed she was trying to hurt her father, but they all missed the point entirely. This wasn't a rebellion. This was liberation. This was a young woman who'd spent 13 years carrying a name that represented nothing but absence and pain, finally choosing to honor the person who'd actually been there every single day. By fall 2024, Suri started her freshman year at Carnegie Mellon, and something remarkable happened. She just lived, like a normal college student, riding the Pittsburgh subway, carrying her own textbooks, standing in line at the campus coffee shop. No bodyguards, no paparazzi presence, no constant reminders that she was supposed to be the daughter of someone famous. Katie helped her move into her dorm, carrying boxes with the tired but grateful smile of a mother who'd done the impossible. She'd raised a daughter who survived fame, survived abandonment, survived the weight of a global mystery, and still turned out to be a grounded, kind, driven young woman. When asked about Suri in rare interviews, Katie keeps it simple. She's an incredible person. But the truth is so much deeper than that. Suri's resilience, her strength, her ability to build a life without bitterness, that all came directly from watching her mother fight like hell to give her a chance at normalcy. Meanwhile, on the other side of this story, Tom continues doing what Tom does, filming major blockbusters, breaking box office records, performing death-defying stunts that make audiences gasp. He's preparing for a movie that's literally going to be filmed partially in space, in actual outer space. The man who spent decades proving he's fearless enough to do anything, risk anything, survive anything, still hasn't risked the one thing that actually matters, walking into a room and trying to rebuild a relationship with his daughter. Insiders say he still pays for her education and medical expenses, just as the 2012 settlement required, but he hasn't been photographed with her in over a decade. There have been no confirmed visits, no phone calls that anyone knows about, no steps have been taken to close the massive gap between them. And here's the thing, Suri has accepted that. She's not waiting anymore. She doesn't check her phone on her birthday hoping for a message. She doesn't leave room in her life for someone who's made it clear they're not interested in filling it. She's moved on. She's building her own dreams, her own identity, her own future. The little girl who once cried herself to sleep, wondering why she wasn't enough, now walks confidently into adulthood with a name she chose and a life she's creating on her own terms.
So what's the truth that shocked everyone? It's not some dramatic revelation or explosive interview. It's something quieter and somehow more powerful than that. The truth is this: Suri didn't break her silence with words. She broke it with choices. She chose to change her name and honor the parent who stayed. She chose to build a life completely separate from Hollywood's expectations. She chose to stop waiting for someone who'd made it clear they weren't coming back. She chose herself. And that choice speaks louder than any interview ever could. For 13 years, people wondered what was going through her mind. They speculated about the pain she must have felt, the questions she must have asked, the nights she must have cried, wondering why she wasn't worth showing up for. And now we know. We know because we can see it in the life she's deliberately built, in the name she chose to carry, in the quiet dignity with which she's handled one of Hollywood's most painful mysteries. She's not angry. She's not bitter. She's not desperately seeking her father's attention or approval. She's simply free. Free from the weight of a relationship that only existed in memory. Free from the hope that was slowly killing her. Free to be exactly who she wants to be, without the shadow of someone else's choices hanging over her. And maybe that's the most shocking part of all. Not that she was abandoned, not that her father chose differently, but despite everything, she found a way to thrive anyway. She survived the unthinkable, and she did it with grace. So here's my question for you. If you were in Suri's position, if you'd spent 13 years waiting for someone who never showed up, would you reach out one more time? Would you try to build that bridge? Or would you do exactly what she did and finally, completely let go? It's not an easy question. There's no right answer, but I want to know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and be honest, this is a safe space for real conversation. If this story hit you the way it hit me, hit that like button. It helps more people understand the real human cost behind Hollywood's biggest mysteries. And if you want more deep dives into the untold stories behind the headlines, the ones that actually matter, the ones that reveal the truth people don't want you to know, subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're just getting started. Suri's story isn't just about celebrity drama, it's about resilience. It's about choosing yourself when no one else does. It's about surviving abandonment and still finding a way to build something beautiful. And that's a story worth sharing. I'll see you in the next one.